Remember the first time you were disappointed with a video game? I do. In 2008, I was an avid reader of gaming magazines, and I started seeing ads for this game called A Witch's Tale. It was being made by the same people who made Disgaea, and it had a Halloween theme and release date? They must be really confident in this game to release it on a holiday. Surely, this was going to be one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and a new staple of the Halloween season. So I bought it, and it ended up being underwhelming, to say the least. It turns out that while this game was being published by NIS America, it was being made by a completely new company, ironically named Hitmaker. This was their first time working with the Nintendo DS, and they wanted to make a bold, touchscreen-controlled action RPG with gameplay sort of like Kingdom Hearts' Chain of Memories. Run, jump, hit things with your iconic pumpkin umbrella. But the size of their ambition, plus their lack of experience, combined with the Nintendo DS being a weird console to develop for, and the holiday deadline, which, I don't know if there's ever been a game released with a holiday deadline that wasn't a mess. All these factors prevented Hitmaker from creating a game that lived up to its concept. They ended up having to delay the release by a year in order to get the game into a good enough state to sell, releasing on Halloween of 2009 instead of 2008. Even so, instead of the touchscreen-controlled action RPG it was supposed to be, the game that we got is a clunky turn-based RPG with battles that are frequent and not fun. At best, it's a flawed game with a very small fan base. At worst, it's wasted potential. So naturally, this is another game that is extremely difficult to find information on. I did manage to strike gold when I found a ton of unused official illustrations posted by DeviantArt user PikaSpirit. The webpage they got these images from doesn't even exist anymore, so PikaSpirit's DeviantArt account might be the only thing standing between this art and total obscurity. I'll be placing these images throughout the story where appropriate. So, what is the game about? Well, according to the intro, 1,000 years ago, powerful witches lived beneath the earth. The witches created magical symbols called runes which made their spells extremely powerful and gave them control over the elements. These witches got sick of living underground and grew jealous of the people who lived on the surface, so they invaded the surface world and used their runes to devastate the land. The surface dwellers were powerless to stop them, until a witch from the surface named Alice, who was also the queen of the land, stood up to the witches. She was able to turn their own rune magic against them and seal them away forever. 1,000 years passed and this history turned into legend. In the present day, in a country called Lenore, we find a young witch named Liddell. As a kid, I thought her outfit was awesome, but as an adult, I think it's way too revealing. There, fixed it. She lives at and attends a magic academy, but isn't satisfied with her progress as a witch, so she's decided to skip class to do research on forbidden magic instead, much to her friend Kitty's chagrin. She's learned about the rune magic that almost ended the world, and she decides to spend the rest of the day looking for it. So she goes to visit an ancient witch named Baba Yaga, but not before making her friend return her library books for her. I feel like this is a pattern. Kitty, you need to stop hanging out with this girl. The jack-o'-lantern light posts are awesome. Less awesome is the mandatory text boxes. This dialogue establishes Liddell as an inconsiderate, snarky teen, like most NIS America protagonists now that I think about it. Man, they really cornered the market demographic of antisocial teenagers. Liddell gets to Baba Yaga's place and asks about where to find the old magic. First, she tries to get out of the conversation, but gives up and lets Liddell know that the castle where the magic is has a nasty vampire living in it who guards the magic. I would question how Baba Yaga knows so much about these things that existed 1,000 years ago, but looking at her, she was probably there. She's clearly somewhat of a grandmother figure to Liddell and wants her to learn a life lesson, so she kicks her all the way into the next level. A creepy castle, complete with torture chamber. Liddell seems way too interested in these implements of torture. In the next room, up the hall, we find a coffin with a Bishojo vampire sleeping in it. His name is Louis. And there's also a sealed door, so we go back to the torture chamber and grab a bomb, which we use to blast the door open. Of course, this awakens the vampire, who tries to stop Liddell from opening the ancient tome. No need to rush, I guess. Liddell opens the book and frees the Queen of the Underground Witches, the Eld Witch. She's ready to pick up right where she left off and gets back to destroying the world. Louis goes off to deal with the problem. Then we see what I assume is an unused game mechanic, where Liddell collects a rune in the book. This is just speculation on my part, but I think while this was still an action RPG, Liddell was originally going to have to learn the new runes by collecting them in her book. Instead, we start with every spell, and they get stronger as Liddell levels up. Liddell really doesn't seem to understand how serious of a situation this is, and Louis is focused on damage control. He says all they can do is try to stop the Eldwitch from destroying the surface world. We go through another hallway, and here we find a playing card. It's the Ace of Hearts, and it's a present from this weird Harlequin dude. He introduces himself as the Jabberwock, and if you're expecting him to be relevant to the story, he won't be. The only stuff he does is speak on the menu screen, where he says,
"Hello, Alice."
And,
"Welcome to A Witch's Tale."
And he also hosts a blackjack minigame. That doesn't have much to do with the story at all, other than that there's a side quest where you can collect a deck of cards, and you need to beat him at blackjack in order to obtain the Joker. We catch up to Louis, and he asks about the doll Liddell has with her. Priorities, man. Liddell explains that it's called a Toth doll. They're popular at her school. They act as personal guardians, which means they'll be our party members throughout the game. They also supposedly grant wishes. We'll be collecting all 28 of them on our journey. Each one will have its own list of spells that they can cast, but unfortunately they don't have their own MP bar. They all cast from Liddell's, and her physical attack is worthless, so she needs the MP more than them, especially in early game. Our starting party member is Liddell's cat-shaped doll, Dinah, who is implied to be a gift from her mother. There are going to be tons of references to Alice in Wonderland in this story, as well as many other classic fairy tales. Liddell's wish is to be the most powerful witch of all time, just like Queen Alice. It sounds completely selfish, but she does actually have kind of a good reason for wanting this. We enter the gate room. This room has 6 gates that lead to each of the 6 kingdoms around Lenore. Unfortunately, you can't visit them in any order. A green bat flies in to let Louis know that the Eldwitch has cast a curse on all of the kingdoms. Their once peaceful inhabitants are becoming hostile, and each one of the princesses is in danger. Louis says that this is because of Liddell's actions, and it's her responsibility to use the rune magic she stole to help bring order back to the kingdoms. But it was his job to guard the book, and he failed, so it's at least half his fault. Liddell has had a terrible attitude this whole time, though, so she could stand to learn to take responsibility for her actions. She tries to go home, but Louis says she's trapped in this world for now. That's pretty creepy. They get interrupted by a candy soldier, named Scotch, from Rem Sakura's, collapsing onto the floor. He says that the princess has been stolen by monsters, and he's all cracked up, so Louis and Liddell carefully carry him to Shadowtown, which is on the outskirts of the castle. Here they let him rest at the Demon Mouth Inn, where he can mend a bit. This inn heals you, but so does stepping on save points, so there's really no reason to use it. Now that he's feeling better, he explains that the sky suddenly turned dark like it was nighttime, and that most of the servants in the castle turned into monsters. The princess became very weak and seemed to be dead. Liddell, now having firsthand seen the consequences of her actions, says that she'll go to Rem Sakura's and see what she can do. Oh, never mind, she was lying, and has no intention of doing anything. Louis is able to guilt-trip her into helping, though. First, we explore Shadowtown. The inhabitants are all shades, trapped between life and death with little to no memories of their former selves. Here, we can get items not by buying them, in fact there is no currency in this game, but by exchanging ingredients for them. The other store is a repair shop for our dolls. If our dolls die in battle, the only way to fix them is to bring them here and exchange a rainbow thread for the repairs. The clerk, Owariko, takes an interest in Liddell's doll. It seems like Dana is special somehow. We head back to the gate room, and Louis gives us something very useful, a tomato. Yes, really. If you lose all your hit points, having a tomato will revive your party and damage the enemy. We finally head to the Candy Kingdom, Rem Sakura's. Each kingdom is based on an element, and this is the poisonous land of sweets. Now we can finally stretch our legs and get used to the game's mediocre combat. The starting spells are relatively weak, and the game does a bad job at conveying what each enemy's weakness is. Every trailer for this game emphasized tracing elemental runes to cast spells, but the game doesn't tell you how to do this. The traceable spells are called Abyss spells, and unless we check our menu, we won't even realize that we already have the neutral Abyss spell. To use it, we need to drag the rune to the red circle on this wheel. It drains a ton of MP though, so it might not be the best thing to do early game. Louis will be following us as a bat, and he tells us to keep a low profile. I don't know how possible that is, since Liddell doesn't exactly blend in anywhere. We also run into the Cheshire Cat. He asks Liddell if she's aware, and determines that she is not. We'll be seeing a lot more of him. As a remnant of the game's original action-based design, Liddell can smash breakable objects with her umbrella. This will sometimes give you items and is kind of fun in the same way that popping bubble wrap is. We travel to the west and find a giant marshmallow blocking our path. The candy guard says we'll need a water bomb to destroy it. To the north, the path to the castle is blocked by a photorealistic scoop of ice cream. We'll need a bomb to destroy this too. So the first 3 puzzles in this game are just blowing things up with bombs. It seems like the Candy Soldier's solution to all the monsters appearing was to put up roadblocks everywhere. We head into the Candy Maze, where we find the first collectible doll, Beloy. He has a healing spell, which is very useful, but his description says he's talented at torture, but he's a healer. Oh, so like he can hurt someone and then heal them and then do it again? Rated E10+. The maze has corrupted candy soldiers throwing almonds. I get the feeling that the person who designed this doesn't like nuts in their chocolate. On the other end of the maze, we find a giant, sad gingerbread man. He seems to be missing something. We can also find a musician here named Dodo, who will tell us the legend of the Toth Dolls. They'll appear once in each world and will tell us this story 1 verse at a time. We also find the water bomb and blow up the marshmallow. We enter a cave and talk to this candy citizen named Strollin. They say that poison magic is the newest form of magic and it corrupts everything it touches, that it was born from the resentment of the underground witches after they were banished, and also of a sacrificed girl? Huh. We continue on over macarons, wafers, and cake, and we meet a mustachioed fellow named Chocoman. He tells us that the Grape Juice River is up ahead, and we'll need to push chunks of cake into it to stop its flow. Here it takes trial and error to figure out where to push off each piece of cake. Also, why is there a Grape Juice River in this candy world? Normally, when you see grape juice in a JRPG, it's actually wine, but they censored it when translating. Neither grape juice or red wine sounds like it would be good with candy, though. Once we open the path, we find this giant candy cane, and going back north of the macarons leads us to the cacao fields. Here, we find our first run-in with the optional mini-boss, Death. You can find it all over the worlds, in treasure chests and breakable objects. Death is afraid of Liddell. I need to get that on a t-shirt. It takes a while to kill him, and he's just barely worth it, since you don't get any experience points from fighting it. Just a rare item. And it doesn't despawn after it's been beaten, so you can beat it over and over, but there's literally no good reason to do so. This game feels barely finished sometimes. A man named Grin up ahead has a long story to tell. A long time ago, to seal the Eldwitch and her people, a powerful spell was necessary, so Queen Alice used all the kingdoms to draw a giant rune spell, like in Full Metal Alchemist, but she needed 1 more kingdom to complete the rune. This now poisonous land was once ruled by an evil god who needed to be appeased. So, of the 2 princesses from the Ice Kingdom, the youngest, Gretel, was chosen as a sacrifice. Alice then created the sweet land of Remsakaras in the princess's memory, but if Gretel was sacrificed, then how is she still the ruler? Despite Alice's good intentions, the now sealed witches and Gretel's resentment caused the poison magic to come into being. We go into Northwest and meet a guard. He warns us not to go into the chocolate pond or the chess cookie cave beyond it. We find the pink bomb that we need to destroy the ice cream, and the guards aren't upset that I blew it up because they were starting to get cold. We take the candy cane to the gingerbread man, and he gives us burnt butter. Then we head over to the chess cookie cave we were warned about, and in here we find Ziggy, another doll. He has high dexterity, despite his looks. The spells he casts are all poison though, which makes him not very useful in this world where most of the monsters are also poison. Eventually, we run into the living embodiment of a toothache. Liddell attacks the monster because, according to her, cavities and dentists are the enemies of candy lovers everywhere. As a poison monster, he's weak against water magic. After we beat him up, we earn meringue. Didn't we come here to save a princess? We go back to Cocoa Park and talk to a candy man named Mill. He says his brother Coco went missing at the Macaron Island and sends us to go find him. But if he knows where he is, why can't he go get him? He probably knows if he takes 1 step he'll be in a random encounter. You can't do this quest out of sequence either. Coco won't be at the Macaron Islands until you talk to Mill. This formula gets tedious as the game will require a lot of backtracking. We take Coco back to his brother and he tells us about his secret base near the chocolate pond. We head north up a straight path and enter a cave to find Baba Yaga? What's she doing all the way out here? Baba Yaga congratulates us on getting the evil vampire to work for us. Here, we can talk to the Shade to exchange our ingredients for items, and we can get the castle key from Baba Yaga in exchange for 3 key items. We're missing one though, the honey needle. We can find it in Coco's secret base. Then we exchange the burnt butter, meringue, and honey needle for the sweets key. This'll basically be the core gameplay loop. We enter a new world, collect 3 key items, find Baba Yaga, and get the key to the castle. We get to the entrance of Gretel's castle, the snack hall, and a white rabbit interrupts us. He sings a poem at us. It's not clear what it means yet. We open the castle and head inside. We make it to the throne room, where an unconscious Gretel is being guarded by a deranged-looking nutcracker. Louis says this was once Gretel's servant, but he's been corrupted by the Eldwitch's curse. We fight him, and he's weak to water. The boss music is a bop, also. After we destroy the Nutcracker, the candy guards say that Gretel choked on a poisonous apple. Liddell thinks that this is a lame way to die and pokes the body with her umbrella, causing the princess to cough the apple piece up and wake up. She thanks Liddell for saving her and declares that she is both strong and lovely. Based. Liddell assumes Gretel was forced to eat the apple, but she just thought it looked good. She then asks if we can check on her sister Hansel, the princess of Remborius the Ice Kingdom, because she can't leave her land to check on her. Also, why is she alive? Wasn't she supposed to have been a sacrifice? Gretel gives us one of the 6 kingdom sigils, and the Vile Abyss rune, the ultimate poison spell. She also says that we can take her doll if we can find it. Then we end up back in the gate room. Louis pats Liddell on the head, which she takes offense to. I would too. Our next stop is Remborius, but first we need to go get Gretel's doll. We can find it inside a crystal in Remsakaras. Also, it's a good idea to head to Shadowtown and see what the Shades have to say. This Shade says, "You've been to the Sweets Kingdom. I can tell. I have no body, so I can't smell anything." Land of Sweets. I can't say I've heard of it. There was none back then. But I know that a princess meant for sacrifice became the worst kind of shadow. You want to travel to the birth of the shadows? Not yet. You aren't strong enough to resist the darkness. Are they talking about Gretel? What does this mean? The shadow at the doll repair shop, Owariko, says that if you use the right combination of dolls, you can unlock their hidden power. This sounds really cool, but it actually doesn't seem to mean anything. The skills your dolls have are all preset, and they don't change based on who's in your party. We go to Remborias. It's mostly a frozen wasteland, though it has very pretty music and also Christmas trees. Aw man, they got Christmas in my Halloween game. Liddell clearly regrets her choice of clothing, but is too stubborn to admit it. We find Baba Yaga right away in this world. Talking to her for the first time in each new world will always get us a divine pill, which is a high-grade recovery item. She's like a granny handing out treats, but instead of hard candy, it's advanced medicine. From here, we explore the snowy landscape and run into a new character, the illustrious Mad Hatter. He mostly speaks in poems and broken French. Louis has a lot of disdain for him. Apparently they're both colleagues who work for Queen Alice. The Hatter says that this land used to represent light and purity, but something that happened during the war turned it into an icy wasteland. Further on, we meet a snowman with a red bucket for a hat. He's an ice adventurer. He says we need to find the Mother Stone to the west to find an item. So we go west, past where we saw the Hatter, and we find the family rock cave. Here, we find a treasure chest encased in red ice. We can't open it yet. And on the second floor, we find a similar chest encased in green ice. We head upstairs and end up on top of a plateau called Mother Rock, where we meet a snow adventurer named Pink Snow. They lament that the poor Snow Queen lost both her children to the Eldwitch, death by magic. They say we need a child's tear shed in fear to melt one of the icicles, and a mother's tear shed in grief to melt the other one. The Snow Queen, grieving her children, used to wander the ice field, but her pain was soothed by Queen Alice's magic, and the Ice Queen now serves Hansel. That sounds kind of shady. What did Alice do to her? Louis says this story is a legend. I don't know, that sounds like he's just covering for his boss to me. We find an ice star off to the right, and these 2 red crystals mark a spot where we can jump down. We head southeast and meet another snow adventurer. He says that there's a mystical pond that can't be frozen, even in this extreme weather. It's beyond the crevice ahead, but we need the ice star to cross. Good thing we already have it. We can't actually make progress this way, though. We move to Lake Boreas and see a familiar face. It's Dodo, here to sing us a new verse. In North Boreas, we head east and come to a room filled with icy spike balls, and the worst sound effect. It sounds more like loud metal clanking. I swear I've heard it before. North of the balls, we can enter the Holly Grove. A voice tells us that we can't pass without the Spring Soul, so we leave. On our way back to the spring, we find a collapsed human. He won't let us through until he gets water. Liddell wonders why he can't just melt some snow, and some of you might be thinking, why can't he just eat the snow? Well, surprise survival tip, it turns out that eating snow won't keep you hydrated. It'll just lower your core temperature and make you more likely to freeze. If you have to, melt snow before you drink it. We make it back to the spring, and now there are glowing orbs. We talk to one that identifies itself as the spring spirit and says it needs a holly leaf. Now we can get into the Holly Grove. Here we meet this yeti named Muffy. He won't let us have the holly leaf, so we fight him. Naturally, his weakness is fire. We get the holly leaf, which we take back to the Spring Soul. It gives us a bottle of water, which we take to the dehydrated guy. He stands up and tells us that something, probably the witch's curse, caused the Ice Queen to freak out and create raging blizzards that he got lost in. We're going to have to deal with this Ice Queen, but first he says there's a lot of treasure in the cave behind him, and he gives us our first key ingredient, the iceberg tip. Finally, we enter the ice cavern. We find a chest with a child's tears inside it, and we also find a doll named Plastic, a synthetic doll that is decent at everything. On the second floor, we meet another ice adventurer. He tells us an old legend of Boreas. Due to its location, it's always been cold, but recently it's become even more harsh than usual. Something similar happened long ago. 1,000 years ago, this land was a battleground. The first daughter of the Eld Witch excelled at ice magic. From her runes came glaciers that glistened like the spirits of the underworld, whatever that means. She created a prison of ice around the land that trapped everything. No one is sure what exactly she was trying to imprison. Alice defeated her before she could explain herself. Thanks to Alice, they were able to restore their climate to something halfway livable, but this new chill feels as if the witch has awakened once again. We head up to Platinum Hill and we fight the first boss, but this time there's two of them. It seems like a weird choice to recycle a boss monster like this. We defeat them and steal their treasure. It's a tuft of grass. I killed 2 yetis so I could steal grass? The game gives us a teleporter that takes us back outside, so at least we don't have to walk all the way back. We need to go back to Family Rock. Here we can use the child's tears to melt one of the ice pillars. This gets us the Ice Crusher. Then we use the mother's tears on the other ice column to get flower petals. Now that we have all 3 ingredients, we go to Baba Yaga and get the ice key. But before we can go into the castle, we use the ice crusher on this big ice block and enter the underground path. Here we can find Lab, a cute doll with ice-cold powers. That's all that's in here. This level has 4 dungeons and 3 of them are just ice caves. I think they might have front-loaded the game with all the really cool creative assets, and now we're starting to notice the strain. And this is only the 2nd level. We go to the frozen lake. Oh no, it's an ice physics sliding puzzle. We end up in front of the ice castle, but before we go in, Baba Yaga reappears and gives us another tomato. Unfortunately, we can only hold one at a time, so we get nothing. The first room of the castle is another sliding puzzle. And we see a few new monsters and some palette swaps of old monsters, which is what most of the new monsters will be moving forward. Eventually, we make it to the throne room, and we see the Ice Queen. It looks like Alice soothed her pain after sacrificing her youngest daughter to Sakharas by turning her into a being made of pure ice. But why are both of her daughters still alive? She's frozen Princess Hansel solid in a misguided attempt to protect her, so we need to fight her. This is an extremely hard boss fight since the only abyss runes we have are neutral and poison, and none of our dolls know fire spells. It takes a very long time to whittle down her health, and we end up needing to use the tomato. Right as we die, it's implied that someone, probably Louis, eats the tomato, revives our party, and deals a nice chunk of damage to the enemy. I think the devs knew that this fight would be nearly impossible if we didn't have a tomato, so that's why they had Baba Yaga give us one. Defeating the Ice Queen frees Hansel from her icy prison. Hansel thanks us, and Liddell says that it's no big deal, that they only came because Gretel asked us to. Louis points out that Liddell is avoiding responsibility, so she jabs him with her umbrella. Liddell changes the subject and mentions that the Ice Queen is an overprotective mother. Hansel says that that's normal, and to always care about your child is motherly love. Liddell doesn't understand this at all, and it'll be clear why later. Hansel gives us the Ice Sigil and also the Ice Abyss spell. And we can now pick up her doll in a cave to the southeast. We get teleported back to the gate room. We don't know where to go yet, and no new gates are open. Suddenly, the ghost of a fairy lady appears. She seems to have been killed 1,000 years ago, and she begs us to stop them from burning her land again. She seems to be mistaking Liddell for someone she knows also. She unlocks the gate to Florin, the Plant Kingdom. We go back to Shadowtown to see what the Shades are up to. Let me make this clear. We're not ghosts. We're shadows. No idea whose shadows we are, though. So they're like actual shadows, they used to belong to people? This one gives us a hint about the next level. And this one says something that cracks the lore wide open. You've been to the Ice Kingdom. Did you see my mother? Or my sister? Did I have a mother? Or a sister? Who am I? I don't remember. Ancient magic. It froze my sister in me? The Eld Witch froze my sister in me? I don't remember. I can't let you go any further. You can't go yet. We head to Florin, the plant level. It looks like a Japanese garden. Liddell hasn't seen plants like these before, and Louis says that according to legend, Princess Kaguya's ancestors brought these plants with them when they descended from the heavens. You heard it here first, folks. Bamboo comes from space. Liddell doesn't understand why, but she feels like there's a connection between her and the ghost and this land, but she doesn't know what. We start at the pond path and meet a Japanese fox spirit called a kitsune. His name is Kenkichi, and he tells us that Florin is where souls come to rest, so this is also a cemetery. After the last level, it's good to be back in spooky territory at least. He warns us that a different tricky fox is off hiding somewhere, and that he's in disguise, meaning he is shapeshifted into something else. This makes sense because in old stories, kitsune had the ability to shapeshift and would often deceive humans for fun and profit. We find a huge flowering cherry tree in a clearing. The Mad Hatter appears again to tell Liddell the legend of this tree. He says that the dead lie beneath it, and that it was planted to calm their wandering souls. That the energy of these souls are what causes the tree to bloom. Liddell calls this idea romantic, and Louis tells the Hatter off for being creepy. Off to the right of the tree, we find Peso, a cat-shaped doll that will lick your wounds. True to its description, it knows a lot of good healing spells. This makes it a good support for the early game. To the northeast, we find this statue of a priest, who poetically tells us the story of two dead lovers, a man named Taro and a woman named Ohana. They died before they could be together, and now they're buried in separate graveyards. Also, Ohana loved a type of blue flower that grows beyond the lake. Further to the north, we find an area called Soul Land. There's a chest we can't open, and a boulder with fancy tassels on it. It says, "Heaven's door leads to legend. You are not welcome. You cannot pass. Follow the path of reincarnation." So we have to come back way later. The destructible items in this world are bamboo shoots. I'm not sure why they melt into pudding, though. To the east, we find an area called the Cursed Land, where we meet a kitsune named Konkichi. He says that 1,000 years ago, the underground witches coveted the beauty of the surface world. The flowers, the sea, the sky, and the moon. This envy caused ugly weeds born in the darkness to sprout underground, and was the basis for the grasping vines of the plant rune. The Eld Witch's second daughter excelled at plant magic. He says bye, but he isn't actually done talking. If we speak to him again, he says, "The winged souls once said, our curse was swallowed by her magic. With this, the black magic turned even darker. No one knows the magic, not even the statues." Liddell asks Louis about the winged. He explains that they were once people who were blessed with butterfly wings, like that ghost girl from earlier, and that Liddell has more to learn from the people around her. Konkichi adds that this land is a graveyard for both the winged people and the witch's second daughter. North of him, we find a black chest that can't be opened yet with a red rose stamped on the ground next to it. We head back to the pond path, and north from the center we end up at a frog pond. East from here we find the Jinzo path. The statue with the blue scarf is clearly the kitsune we were warned about, but we can't get him to move until we do something else first. Ahead, we learn that this red arch covered in streamers is called a torii, and it means that there's a divine being waiting ahead. So we approach the Thunder Shrine, a dungeon inside a sacred tree. Lightning strikes the trees we approach, but first to the right is Baba Yaga, and south there's a block we can push off the side of a broken bridge that makes a shortcut back to the beginning. In the Thunder Tree, Some paths are blocked off until we step on the correct buttons. On the 3rd floor, we run into my least favorite thing in a JRPG, teleportation. My sense of direction is already terrible to begin with, so bringing teleportation into the mix just frustrates me. This is where I had to start using a map. Shout out and thanks to GameFAQs user Leonia19 for making all of these. On the 2nd floor, we find Valen, a doll that dreams of learning every spell. In a previously inaccessible part of the 1st floor, the Carnival Beast, weird name, appears. He says he'll devour us before we disturb the Thunder Lord. Paradoxically, his weakness is thunder, so I don't know what he's doing in this thunder tree. We beat him up and gain a dragon neck, our first key ingredient. From here we go east to the triangle well at the frog pond. A fox named Inakichi warns us not to touch the frog, and to be careful of the walls because they lead to somewhere. Inside the triangle well we find Onion, a simple doll shaped like an onion. It contains seeds. We do a lot of exploring, teleporting, and fighting. Eventually, we find a painting of a frog on one of the walls. We touch it and it comes to life and attacks us as a samurai frog. We beat him up, which changes the picture. Then, a ladder to the surface appears. Up here we gain the fire rat fur, our second key ingredient. We also meet 2 more of Alice's servants, the March Hare, who has been turned into a humanoid character with green hair for this game, and the Dormouse, who is still just a regular talking mouse. They declare that Liddell is a disappointment, and they can't imagine what the Hatter must think about this, but if he's in favor, then they won't make a fuss about it? All of Alice's servants talk like there's some kind of greater purpose to what Liddell is doing besides just fixing the mistake she made. They leave, but not before giving her the nickname Disaster Girl. It's pretty fitting. After all, even death is afraid of Liddell. We warp back out to the entrance and head southwest to find Dodo again with another part of their song. Southeast from the pond path brings us to the Red Graveyard where we can find the ghost of Ohana, the lady the statue told us about. She says that she can't go to heaven unless her boyfriend forgives her for something that she didn't like. We could find Taro nearby in a graveyard with white flowers. Right before they both died, they had an argument and they never made up. He can't leave, so he wants us to give her this blue bellflower. You would think that he handed us the flower and we could give it to Ohana, but no. When he says, "take this flower," in what is either a mistranslation or an oversight, what he actually meant was, go find the flower and then give it to her. Now that we've seen this event, we're able to go back to the statue that's clearly a disguised fox, and now the game lets us talk to him. He disappears and we can enter the Blue Flower Garden. Interacting with this stack of rocks will bring us to a place called the Memory Graveyard. Here we find a diary from a very long time ago. The book was given to the diary owner as a present from her friend. It says that where her friend is from, they use books like this all the time to store magic for later use. It really does sound like collecting the runes was going to be a game mechanic at one point. The diary owner declares that she and her friend will stay friends forever, and black ink has been spilled on every single page after that one. So someone redacted this journal, but who and why? We can assume that they probably didn't stay friends forever. Next to the stack of rocks is the bluebell flower. We bring it to Ohana. Besides it being her favorite flower, it also represents undying love, so she's able to move on. Going back to Taro, we find that he's gone and there's a chest in his place. Instead of containing the last key ingredient we need, we get a letter of thanks from him. It's just a piece of paper with 4 numbers on it. What the hell are we supposed to do with this? North of the pond path, we find another talking statue. He says Princess Kaguya made it his duty to uphold the memory of the winged people who used to live here. They were ruled by a woman named Princess Rapunzel, who was friends with each of the neighboring kingdom's rulers. The land was once teeming with life and flowers. Then, the war happened. The Eldwitch scorched the old Florid, leaving nothing behind but ashes and devastation. The few surviving winged people prayed to the moon for salvation. Even though it seemed hopeless, Princess Kaguya's ancestors heard them and descended to the earth, bringing their own flora and fauna with them, creating the landscape that we see now, and explaining why this entire country is a graveyard. Generations of princesses have tended to the garden since. This soothes the souls of the winged. He also tells us that the diary we found was Rapunzel's. We continue forward to the Jinzo path. A soul that previously kept us out now lets us in, and I guess all the people buried here had it in their wills that they wanted to rest for eternity in a slide puzzle. Here we use the code Taro gave us. This lets us enter the grave path. In here we find a soul that got lost while playing. We follow the path to some steps that take us to this treasure chest we've been seeing. It has the Horai branch inside, the final key ingredient. Now we can go and get the plant key from Baba Yaga and enter the castle. Liddell is experiencing some culture shock from the architecture. This dungeon actually starts out sort of fun compared to the others. You need to memorize the patterns in the first room and input them in the next rooms to move forward. After this it gets boring again though, with more stock standard RPG dungeon mechanics. We get to the throne room and find a giant green dragon. Louis calls it a moonworm. Princess Kaguya is encased in a giant bamboo stalk. I guess for her own safety? It's unclear. We fight and eventually kill the dragon. This is another boss that's weak to an element we haven't gotten powered up yet, lightning, so it takes a long time to beat him. After we kill him, Kaguya emerges from the bamboo. She remarks that the curse on this land is particularly bad, and implies that she knows something about the Eld Witch. Liddell asks if she wants to return to the moon, and Kaguya says that she can't leave Florin until the souls of the winged are at peace. Until then, it's her duty to tend their graves. She asks Liddell if we can go and check on the water kingdom of Oseria, because Florin relies on their kingdom for fresh water. Kaguya also knows Aquel, the water princess, and says that she's very immature and she may be in danger with the Eld Witch on the warpath. Liddell says not to worry and that she'll knock all kinds of maturity into Princess Aquel. Kaguya replies, "Good." Holy crap, Kaguya, what did Aquel ever do to you that you feel the need to sick this pig-tailed gremlin on her? She gives us the upgraded plant room, the Florin sigil, and permission to take her doll. And we warp back to the gate room, as always. Louis pats Liddell on the head again. Despite her saying that she thinks it's annoying, he continues to do it. This is probably supposed to come across as endearing, but nowadays it just makes Louis come across like a creep who doesn't respect personal space. Liddell has bigger things to worry about, however. She's starting to realize that wielding the same power that was used to nearly bring the world to an end and kill thousands of people isn't actually as fun as she thought it would be, and she's feeling a growing sense of anxiety the more she uses the rune magic. Louis gives Liddell the option to quit and go home. This makes sense because he's probably powerful enough to apprehend the Eld Witch by himself. Liddell is mostly just here to learn some life lessons and face the consequences of her actions. She remains determined to see things through to the end, though. Before we head to Oseria, we need to go back and grab Kaguya's doll. We can find it in the tree path to the west. We also need to head back to Shadowtown and see what they have to say. This dude says they aren't sure why, but the powers of the Great Witch Alice and the Eld Witch don't seem to affect Shadowtown. That's interesting. Then we get this. All the winged became shadows. They lost wing and heart and became flying shades. They forgot their past, their love of flight, but I remember. The red-eyed witch torched the winged. The winged shadows were very sad, but quickly forgot and became mere shadows. If you go into darkness, you'll lose your wings and become a shadow yourself. Very interesting. This dude just says that he wonders what's beyond that rock in Florin. That's all the new dialogue. So it's time to head to Oseria, the Flooded Kingdom. Before we get there, we see a flashback to Liddell's childhood. We learn that she was abandoned at a young age, in front of the academy she now attends. To make things worse, it's at night and in the snow. Just as she's about to give in to the cold, the apparition of a woman who looks like Queen Alice appears and embraces her. Is this her mom? Is this a ghost? Is it a hallucination? It's not clear, but this explains a lot about Liddell's loner attitude. We arrive in Oseria, and it's pretty nightmarish, just an endless sea under a red moon. Liddell says walking on water is an easy trick, so drowning won't be an issue yet. First we head east and find Genop, an old doll who's always willing to help. There's nothing else to find above the water except for this sparkle. Interacting with it will cause the Cheshire Cat's face to appear like a reflection on the surface of the ocean. He calls us arrogant for walking on water and pulls us under the sea. Fortunately, Liddell ends up in a large air pocket called the Red Coral Cave. He shows up again to warn us that we won't be able to go in the water because we need to breathe. The music in this level, once again, is extremely beautiful. To the northwest, we find a jellyfish house where a father jellyfish is worried about his missing son. He won't let us pass, so I guess we have to go find his kid. If we go south, we find Dodo again, with another verse for us. To the east, we find a big empty cave called the Shark Base, but there's nothing to do here yet. To the southwest, we find a kind jellyfish. She tells us about a huge shark named Sammy the Drifter, who apparently has an amazing treasure. We run into Death again, and it's as non-threatening and uneventful as it always is. I don't know why they decided to make the least intimidating Grim Reaper ever, but it's an interesting choice. Death is always just around the corner, but it's nothing to worry about. Then there's this sea anemone who recognizes the rune magic we're using, so he's scared of us. Way up in the northeast corner, we find the jellyfish kid. He says he ran away because his dad yelled at him, but we're able to convince him to follow us back to his house. His dad starts yelling at him again, only for Liddell to interrupt and let him know that she found him crying. Father and son resolve to be nicer to one another, and they warn Liddell that there's no air beyond their house, just water, and we won't be able to use magic or items to heal damage from not being able to breathe. So we'll need to find an air seed to travel through the water, just like in Willow. On the way out, Liddell reflects that she likes to see families that are happy together, but she changes the subject before things can get too personal. The pirate hideout is in the northwest, and it's the only place besides the Red Coral Cave where we can still breathe. Many of the chests that we find in this hideout will contain a battle with 3 skeletons. These must be the pirates. We find Mosselisk, a whiny doll with plenty of tricks up its sleeve. We activate a water jet and cross a disappearing tile puzzle. And find a warp tile to a chest with red coral in it. We meet a pirate jellyfish who reminds us that we need the air seed to go any further. Fortunately, it's just to the north of him. Now we can breathe underwater, but unlike in Willow where we just stop taking damage from being underwater, Liddell will still take damage from being in the ocean, but you'll be able to breathe at these air pockets. The path to the castle is blocked by the football fish. He's badly injured and can't move, so we'll need to get fish medicine from the Sea Lord's palace for him. We head inside, and first there's this annoying sea turtle puzzle. You have to stand on them to move forward, but it's very easy to slip off of them and it's not clear what causes you to slip. We get to the other side, and now there's all these one-way currents marked by seaweed that makes navigating the dungeon a bit of a pain. We find Peyton, a very slippery doll shaped like a fish, after hitting buttons and drifting around. We find the boss, Twirlsource. He's weak against poison. We beat him and gain the Black Pearl. Then we head outside. We give the fish medicine to the football fish. He says a giant monster appeared and swallowed the princess. He was injured trying to save her. That sounds pretty fatal. I'm not really sure we can save her from that. He moves out of the way, but there's no need to go past him without the key. The last thing we need to do is track down Sammy the Drifter for his treasure. We find him back in the Red Coral Cave to the west. He has a skull painted on his face and he's weak against plants. After we beat him, he runs away, so we need to track him down again. This time we find him southeast in the Blue Coral Cave. He's all scratched up from our first fight, and he assumes that we're stalking him. He says kids aren't his thing. Thank goodness. Liddell, of course, is disgusted by this accusation and declares that she's going to turn him into soup. This is actually a subtle hint that he's now weak against fire. We beat him again, and he says he doesn't mind a strong woman.
You are a fast mover. Please have a seat right there.
He also runs away again. We can find him back at the Red Coral Cave in the Shark Base. He's decided that he's in love with us, and Liddell says she's gonna cool him off, which is a hint that he's now weak against ice. We beat him up one last time, and he declares that it could never work between them, and leaves.
Oh no. He lives.
He also drops his treasure, the Rainbow Pearl. Now we can take all these ingredients to Baba Yaga. On the way to her, we meet a sea urchin that says Osiris sank underwater because of rune magic. The Eldwitch's third daughter used her water magic to wreak havoc before Alice was able to strike her down. We get the key from Baba Yaga and head past the football fish to the castle. Before we head in this time, the Mad Hatter shows up, and he wonders if Liddell is really okay with wielding such terrible magic. It does seem like Liddell is starting to regret her actions. Before he leaves, the Hatter wonders if a child so obsessed with power will be able to survive. Louis says not to worry about him and encourages Liddell to keep moving forward. Louis seems to think that we'll be able to save Aquelle before the monster digests her. I guess we are working based on fairy tale logic here, plus it would screw up the core gameplay loop if any of the princesses were actually dead. So yeah, she's probably fine. There's more currents in the castle, but these ones don't have seaweed to indicate which way you'll be taken, so we slip and slide our way into the throne room. I was expecting a scarier monster. This is literally just a giant bug-eyed octopus. Before she attacks, Liddell says, "Hey Octopus, don't you know royalty is high in trans fatty acids?" He looks absolutely crazy, and he's weak against poison, so the abyss rune that we got from Gretel comes in handy here. We beat him, and he spits out Princess Aquelle, who is completely unscathed. She was also sleeping through the entire thing and didn't even realize she was in any danger. I see why Kaguya sent us to check on this tuna head. Aquel ignores everything that's going on and is completely focused on flirting with Louis. It seems like these two have a history. Aquel is suspicious of Liddell, who is quick to point out that she owes her for the rescue. Aquel correctly assumes that Liddell is responsible for everything going wrong in the first place, though. Maybe she's smarter than she seems. Liddell threatens to leave Louis alone with Aquel, and the princess takes this as a kindness and finally gives us her sigil, the upgraded water spell, and permission to use her doll. Liddell asks her if she can open one of the other gates, and Aquel remembers that she sent a messenger to the blazing desert kingdom of Alsara, and they still haven't come back. Who was the messenger? A jellyfish. Liddell points out that he's probably dead by now, and Aquel says maybe, but if he's alive she gives us some special salt to give to him. Wouldn't that just dry him out more? Back in the gate room, Liddell still feels uneasy about wielding the magic, but she's starting to understand it, though she doesn't explain further. We go back to Osaria and grab Aquel's doll southeast of the Blue Coral Cave, and it's another trip to Shadowtown. The Shades have a lot to say this time around. One of them scoffs at Liddell's sudden acquisition of power and says that they hate witches like her. One of them tells us about that chest back in Florin that we still can't open, and one of them explains that long ago, when the Eldwitch's third daughter sank Osaria, many people became shadows. They then appear to start questioning Liddell's dolls, saying that the dolls have bodies unlike the shadows, but they also do not possess hearts. Maybe Owariko is the only shade who understands the dolls. Wait a second, why does Owariko have a name when none of the other shades do? Something's really not right about this location. We head to Alsara and get another flashback to Liddell's childhood. After she was abandoned, the headmaster of the Magic Academy legally adopted and enrolled her. The other children were cruel to Liddell for seemingly being abandoned by her mother, but Liddell believes that she was left at the school because her mother wanted her to become a powerful witch. And, once she's as powerful as she can possibly be, her parents will come back for her. It's unclear if she's still holding on to this hope as a teenager, or if she's outgrown the idea but kept her desire to be powerful as a way to fill the void. This gives us context for most of Liddell's behavior. We arrive in the Blazing Kingdom, which, thanks to the Eldwitch's curse, is even hotter than it normally is. The Hatter appears before we even go anywhere, saying that we'll have to harness fire if we want to save Princess Lyra. That's just straight up false. We need ice magic to beat the bosses in this level. We find the head of a giant statue in the middle of a desert. Since this level is based on the 1001 Nights, this is probably a djinn. We can't do anything here yet though, so we head east and talk to this fire adventurer. He says he could swear there used to be a palace around here somewhere. All we can find is a foggy clearing called Mystery Desert. Nothing can be done here yet either. Further east we find Kilt, a princely doll that remains forever calm, and we meet another fire adventurer. He says without some golden thing we won't be able to enter the cave on the other side of the desert. Southeast we find stairs leading down to the eastern twin cave, but there's also a western twin cave, so we go upstairs and end up on a plateau where we find Dodo again. Back down in the twin cave we find and push one half of a giant rock. To push the other half of the rock we'll have to cross the desert and find the entrance to the west twin cave. On the way we find Baba Yaga, who's enjoying the warm weather. We find the cave entrance and also this disturbing aloe vera plant with a face who says, Burn it all away. We don't need a world we can't control. My mother and sisters are all furious. I will scorch the land with my magic rune. I can hear the voice coming from my roots. So it seems like the Eldwitch's daughter's resentment ran so deep that their voices still echo underground long after their deaths. We enter the West Twin Cave, making sure to grab the statue fragment while we're here. We also find and push the second half of the rock. Once they're pushed together, it disappears and we get the golden lamp. We also get warped to the Jinn statue, where the white rabbit appears to sing poetry at us again. There exists a golden lamp, held in a girl's dark eyes. The blinding lamp is lit and the fiery soul awakens. The light is extinguished. Liddell asks what he means, but he just says his eyes hurt and leaves. I think he might be blind. Exploring the center of the desert leads us to another fire adventurer. He lets us know about the Fire Lord Tower to the west, so we head that way. We can also see the messenger Aquel sent. He's literally a child, and is stuck behind rocks, so we'll need to go underground to reach him. Hang in there, Jelly Boy. We head northwest until we find a cave with a fire adventurer posted outside of it. He warns Liddell that the magma region and the Fire Lord Tower can get hot enough to drain your health, just like the ocean. Only here we can use recovery spells and items, so it's less of an issue. Especially since we've been exchanging all of the ingredients we're picking up for items. He commends our bravery and gives us another recovery item. We enter the magma region, and there's an adventurer in here too. He has water for us to drink in case we run out of other ways to heal. But he's kind of made irrelevant because the save points also heal you. It seems like the save points healing us might have been a later feature added to lower frustration. We enter the Fire Lord Tower and climb up to the 3rd floor and fight the Heat Scorpion. We gain a scorpion tail. We also find some stairs that lead up to where the messenger is. His name is Shopper Jellyfish, and the Osarius salt rehydrates him, and he gives us grilled mandragora, a recovery item. I was really hoping for a key ingredient though, but at least we saved the boy. Northeast, we find 2 more talking aloe vera plants, and they warn us that this is a holy place, and if we aren't quiet, we might wake up the spirit of the former princess, not to be confused with Lyra, the current princess. East of them, we find the Oasis Monument, and since we have the gold lamp, the stone moves aside, and it looks like the people of Alsara bury their royalty in dungeons. We track down 3 talking jars and beat them up. They're brothers, and it's their job to keep out intruders. They're all weak against water, so our new Abyss rune is very handy. We get the red stone ring and warp outside. The Cheshire Cat appears. He says that the princess and inhabitants are celebrating the arrival of a hero, but he wonders if they know that the hero is the villain. We can talk to the statue in the center of the desert. He says it was his job to protect the princess, and it sounds like he wasn't able to save her. Instead of going straight to Baba Yaga for the key, we head west and grab an item that we missed called the Open Sesame. This lets us go places in the Fire Lord's tower that we weren't able to unlock before, so we can grab Mucho, a clown-like doll who gets excited while gazing at fire. Now we can get the key from Baba Yaga and head into the Mystery Desert. The fog is gone, but there isn't a castle. The White Rabbit shows up again, and it sounds like he's giving us instructions for a puzzle that was not implemented. Because he says, "Marked by star fragments, a path is revealed. Unite the points of light and illuminate the truth." We don't have to do anything like that though, because the fire key reacts to nothing and the palace rises up from under the sand. We travel through the dungeon, and instead of a throne room, we end up in a courtyard with a bunch of NPCs. Louis says that this isn't right, and he recognizes this place and these people from 1,000 years ago. We talk to the NPCs. The only one who says anything interesting is this lady, who says that Liddell can't be from Lenore because at this point in time the only thing there is Queen Alice's castle. I wonder, does this mean that the castle we went to in Lenore at the beginning is Queen Alice's castle? Why would it be abandoned like that though? After we talk to everyone, the child princess, Scheherazade, steps outside. She seems calm and friendly until she notices that Liddell has the gold lamp. She demands that Liddell give the lamp to her, and seems to mistake her for the Eld Witch, and believes that Liddell is here to kill her. So she summons the djinn to defend herself. He's weak against ice. Despite having the most powerful ice spells, it still takes a really long time to kill him. Once we do, Princess Scheherazade fades away, revealing Princess Lyra. It seems like the djinn regretted not being able to save the princess, so under the Eld Witch's curse he created an illusion of the Alsara he remembered. Louis explains that Scheherazade was supposed to be the very first princess of Alsara, but the Eld Witch attacked the day after she was coronated. Lyra was partially aware while she was trapped in the illusion, so she's very empathetic to the former princess's pain. Lyra says that thanks to Liddell, Scheherazade can rest in peace, but Liddell doesn't feel like she deserves any credit until she finishes cleaning up the mess she made. Lyra upgrades our fire magic and gives us her sigil and permission to use her doll, and she opens the last gate to Artis, the machine world. Back in the gate room, Liddell is fangirling over meeting Princess Lyra, but she maintains that Alice is still the best. Liddell is trying to be more honest about her feelings. She finally seems to understand that she should have never come looking for this power, and that if she was a worse person, she would be just like the Eld Witch. But she's realized that just because this power was used for evil, that doesn't make her evil by association, because she's able to use the magic to help people. Louis seems to be proud of her. Before we go to the final kingdom, we need to grab Lyra's doll, which we can find by entering Alsara and walking south of the entrance. Then, we check back in at Shadowtown. Things are getting pretty creepy here. Hey, it seems like you've improved as a witch. You'll become a great feast for the One, and also for us. There are some things you're better off not knowing. The shadow blocking the path is having a straight-up existential crisis, being unable to remember what it felt like to be truly alive. They can't even remember what warmth is. Soon the mouth of darkness will open wide and swallow you whole. Everyone here has been getting more menacing over time. We better leave. We enter the portal to Artis and see one last flashback to Liddell's childhood. It seems like her doll Dana has been her only source of comfort for a really long time. We arrive in Artis, the Machine Kingdom. Louis explains that the people here don't practice magic, they use science and technology. The element of the land is lightning. Liddell says the people here are weird for not using magic. Liddell, you can't just walk into a foreign country and call everyone who lives there weird. Louis agrees that Princess Dorothy is weird, and he wonders if we'll be able to move her iron heart. Liddell assumes this means that she's a robot. Spoilers, she is not a robot. Now we can explore Artis. It might just have the best music in the game. Central Artis is a circular area with a giant clock in the center. It really makes the land seem artificial. I think the devs might have been rushing to finish this level though, because the mapping feels weird and confusing in a way that none of the previous levels do. There are technicians in astronaut suits to talk to. One of them is a robot welder. He says he may have created the devil. Apparently the robo-doorman he made went haywire, and he warns us to watch out for him. East of that guy, we find a mech adventurer. He says if it wasn't for this fence, they could get to the other side. Down the stairs and to the north, we can go through a gear-shaped door into the engine hallway. The lights in here aren't working, and the Cheshire Cat shows up again. He says the creepiest thing he could possibly say. Do I seem like a cat to you? So what, is he not a cat? What the hell is he?
They look like monsters to you?
We navigate the dark halls until we find a novice mechanic. He says it's his job to remove the roadblock, but he can't go to work until he solves a puzzle, and that he's completely stumped, so we have to do it for him. It's just one of those sliding tile puzzles where you have to make a picture, but instead of using any of the actually good art from the game, they just labeled the tiles from 1 to 15. We solve it, and the roadblock goes away. We also find Baba Yaga in a random basement. She hates machines. In the east hallway, we find a puzzle piece. We also find a ton of spikes blocking our way. And also a ton of fights with death, all on the same screen. I give up trying to find the robo-doorman in here and go back out past where the roadblock was. We find a clock guard who says that the door behind him is locked and that something must have happened at the electricity hall because there are blackouts everywhere. We go northeast and unlock a door. The top part of the map connects, even though it looks like there should be a huge gap here. We're able to open the gate to the unexplored part of the electricity hall, where we finally find the robo-doorman. This one is bronze, and he's weak against water and plants. Beating him makes the lights turn back on. And it lets us find another puzzle piece. We head east to a room that was impassable with the power turned off, and we find Dumbo, a square doll with lots of knowledge. We meet two anthropomorphic gears. According to them, gears with faces fought to defend Artis in the Great War. We head back to the place with the spikes and figure out that we can cross them without having to do anything. We just take damage from stepping on them. We meet Dodo one last time and hear the final verse of their story. Completed, it is... Behind the sweet scent lies great bitterness. My name is Dodo. I pass on stories of greatness. I travel the world as a cursed being. Please hear me. The night is long and we have ample time. The tale of Toth the doll. Unchanging from long ago, since ancient times, howling storms, whispering frost, frozen fingertips, stitches made from rainbow thread, wish upon the doll. Woven with wishes, the doll is hidden in the hills. Since time out of mind, odd traditions remain. The moon chants a lullaby on a deep quiet night. Who wishes on the doll? Child? Maiden? Hag? My dearest Toth, please find a home. Find someone who can grant my wish. A heart's silent plea drifts away on a dusky wind. The red moon can even reach deep underwater. The faint glow leads the way to mountains and valleys, and unto the sea, where they hide their prayer dolls. Dear Toth, please carry my wish to someone. Whoever finds the doll can create a miracle. Hiding, waiting, dreaming. Fiery winds and painful hope burn this body, this heart. Each uneven stitch is woven with its master's desires. Even now, all over the world, the little dolls await. battered by dusty winds but still holding firm, quietly waiting for the day to rest in someone's arms. Even in this mechanical town exists an arcane tradition. Since dolls can wait longer than any clock can count, folks believed a special power could grow within. Using its new master, it'd grant the wishes of its last. That's how everyone knew the dolls had special power, long ago, in distant times, since time out of mind. That's how the story goes. So it really sounds like the doll party members were supposed to have wishes for us to grant. Kind of like in Rhapsody, a musical adventure, another Miss America game where your party members are dolls. Despite how cool each of the Toth dolls are, they really just come across as a hollow mechanic, and they're nowhere near as important as the narrative implies that they should be. Heading down the stairs behind where the robot was takes us to a new part of the electricity bridge where we find Mira, a witch doll capable of paralyzing people. We go downstairs to an ancient atelier where we can find a painting of the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodsman, with only a silhouette of the lion. They can speak, and they tearfully beg us to help Princess Dorothy. They say that they can't help her because she stopped trusting them, and Liddell wonders what happened to the lion in the painting. The painting gives us an old key, which we take to the northwest basement in the condemned hall and use it to unlock a chest to get a light bulb. We climb upwards until we find a catwalk to an area called the Forgotten Room, where we meet a mech adventurer who gives us a puzzle piece. And this mechanic. He says that the lights went out and he's stuck here, but even so, he's more worried about Princess Dorothy. She's dismissed all of her servants, and she has been completely alone ever since something happened to her father. Well, if she really has no servants, it sounds like there shouldn't be a boss fight for this level to worry about. Further down the catwalk, we find out what the puzzle pieces we've been finding are for. They're pieces of this circuit board, and when gathered, they display a code. A green 4, a red 6, a yellow 9, and an unknown blue number, since we're missing a few more pieces. We go north from here to an area called the Mangled Clock, and here we can step on the different buttons to adjust the time. We make the green hand point to the 4, the red to the 6, and the yellow to the 9. Instead of bothering to go all the way around looking for the blue number, all we have to do is rotate the blue hand until it lands on the right number. This will cause a gate to open and a chest with a broken spring to appear. We go back to the catwalk and east to the gear bridge, where we press a button to move this slab of metal, and we find the second Robo-Doorman. This one is silver. We beat him up. Then from the gear bridge, we go down a few flights of stairs to the bottom pit, where we can find the final golden Robo-Doorman. He really does sound like he's possessed or something, but we beat him up for some cursed oil. Now we can get the machine key from Baba Yaga and enter the castle at the end of the catwalk. But before we head inside, Baba Yaga appears and commends Liddell for having grown up a bit since this whole thing started. We enter the castle where we navigate around floating platforms and eventually arrive at the throne room. There's a lion in here, making some grade A lion noises, I might add. And I thought Dorothy had no servants. We fight the lion. He's weak against plants. We beat him, and it turns out that the lion has been Dorothy this whole time. She thinks that Liddell is here to kill her since she's wielding the same power as the Eld Witch, and Liddell slaps her. Dorothy says that she doesn't need anyone, and that she can only rely on herself. Louis lets Liddell know that Dorothy's father was killed by his most trusted servant, and Dorothy tells him to shut up. She says that she took the lion's power, and that she doesn't need friends as long as she can just use their power. Liddell calls her out for being cruel, and says that if she can't trust the people who look to her for leadership, then she doesn't deserve to be a princess at all. This is what Dorothy needed to hear. She gives us her sigil and powers up our thunder magic, and she also lets us take her doll, which we can find in the room with the painting. Back in the gate room, Louis says that since all the gates have been opened, the path is open to where Alice prepares to awaken. Louis warns Liddell that once we enter Alice's world, we won't be able to return, so we go to Shadowtown one last time. The shadow blocking the path forward confirms that they lived in Remborias 1,000 years ago, and recognizes the ice rune that Liddell is using as being the magic that froze them. They say that since Liddell is using the magic that turned everyone into shadows, she deserves to become a shadow herself. So they stop blocking the path forward for Liddell's safety, and are now actively encouraging her to go ahead and lose all that she holds dear. We enter the Land of Darkness, and this green bat takes us to the castle from the beginning of the game. Louis appears in the coffin room and challenges us to an optional boss fight. He's weak against neutral damage. We beat him after about 17 minutes of really dull combat, and he gives us his doll. It's extremely useful, but there's nothing else to do here for now, so we enter Alice's world. We tell Louis we're ready to go, and the floor opens up beneath us like a trap. Liddell lands alone in a sepia-toned forest maze, and for some reason being here causes her doll Dinah to evolve. It seems like Dinah may carry the wish of Liddell's mother, whoever she may be. We meet the Jabberwock to the east, and Liddell even forgot who this guy was, so don't feel bad if you did. He says the secret door isn't open yet, and that he'll be waiting on the other side. He also gives us the Ace of Spades, a card that represents death. Ahead, we enter a foggy area, and the Cheshire Cat warns us that we've entered the maze forest. It's like the Lost Forest from Zelda, if it was even more confusing. Here we can find dolls of each of Alice's servants. The Hatter, the Cat, the March Hare, and the Dormouse. We make it to the exit and find the Tea Party Garden, which has a long table where the Hare and the Hatter are sitting. They summarize the conflict between the underground witches and Alice. And they add that, after the witch and the runes were sealed away, Alice needed to stay in the underworld to protect the seal. But that doesn't make any sense because how were we able to get the book without seeing her? We leave and follow the White Rabbit to Alice's court. Louis somehow got here before us, and Queen Alice says that Liddell did a good job collecting the sigils and the runes and that she'll be able to use them to seal away the Eld Witch again, no problem. Liddell feels like she's met Alice before. The Queen quickly changes the subject, and as Liddell goes to hand over the book, the Eld Witch appears, and Alice is run through by a beam of magic. She falls to the ground, dead. The Eld Witch explains that the only reason why she started wreaking havoc is because Queen Alice refused to allow her daughters to reincarnate. So I guess characters in this setting are immortal? The Eld Witch tries to get Liddell to join her, but Liddell fights back. We manage to win, and the Eld Witch wonders if Liddell, with the ability to use the runes so easily, could be from the underground. Louis deals the final blow, but there is no celebration. It seems like there must always be an Alice to maintain the seal, and with the previous queen dead, Liddell is now the only suitable candidate. The queen is dead. Long live the queen. Then we get mood whiplash with this rocking theme over the credits. So what kind of ending was that? Well, if we move ahead to the end of the credits, we find Liddell waking up outside Baba Yaga's house? So it was all a dream? That's it? Or maybe not. The White Rabbit passes by, and we see a scene with Louis speaking to Alice through a darkened mirror. In order to protect the book, anyone who goes looking for it gets sucked into a dream world and tested to see if they're capable of surpassing Queen Alice. So everything that Liddell saw and did was mostly real? Only we got a bad ending. Through no fault of our own, either, because it turns out it's impossible to get the good ending on your first playthrough. That's right. If you want to see the real ending, you need to go through this slog of a game all over again. You know I did it. Fortunately, you keep your dolls, and all your items, and experience points, so it doesn't take nearly as long the second time through. One more time. Skip class, bother an old lady, break and enter, commit terrorism, go to Candyland, save Gretel, go to Christmasland, save Hansel. There's no difference in the game until we get to Florin. This time, we can make this boulder disappear and enter the past. This is what Florin looked like before the Eld Witch had it burned to the ground. Louis is unable to follow us, so Liddell is on her own here, and we won't be able to come back to this place once we leave. A winged girl lost her purse and won't let us through until we find it. We come across one of the crystals that normally have the princess dolls in them, and we break it to reveal a ladybug purse. A strange girl in a red hood appears and asks us how we broke the crystal. Liddell said she just dispelled the curse, but this confuses the girl, who says that there is no curse, this is just a game that they play where she comes from. You take something that belongs to someone else and trap it in a crystal so they can't get it. Funny? I don't know, it must be a cultural thing. The girl notices Liddell has no wings, so she can't be from Florin, and she explains that she lives underground. She hates living down there, but it is her kingdom. She introduces herself as Anne, and they play a bit. Anne says she doesn't have much time to spend on the surface. She wants to play with Liddell again in the future, and she gives her a special bracelet to remember her by. Princesses of the Underground are meant to pass this bracelet down to their daughters, but Anne feels like Liddell should have it. She has to leave to deal with princess stuff, but she makes Liddell promise that they'll meet again. We go and give the winged girl her purse back, and she takes us to meet Rapunzel, the Princess of Florin. Liddell finally realizes that she's in the past. Rapunzel asks Liddell if she comes from the underground because she looks very similar to Anne. Liddell says no, but she does know Anne, and Rapunzel thinks this is great because Anne could really use another friend. And she makes plans for the three of them to have a tea party under the moon next time Liddell visits. She also gives Liddell her doll to remember her by. Liddell appears back in the present, and to Louis' surprise, she does something that she hasn't let herself do for a long time. She cries. A lot. We can't go back, only forward. There's 3 new optional bosses now. We fight one in Florin, the other in Osaria, and the other in Alsara. Beating each one lets us open the rose chests for 3 new key ingredients. Once we have all 3, we take them to Baba Yaga and get the forbidden key. This will let us unlock the chest in the seal room of Louis' castle, and we get a doll with the Eld Witch's power. Its stats are all broken, and it's definitely the best one in the entire game to have. It's too bad that you only get it right before the very end though, so it isn't good for much. We go through the rest of the game after clearing out Florin, and nothing else is different until we get to Alice's world. This time it's super different. Everything is purple, there are crows cawing, and this creepy moaning noise. Sounds like the same guy who was doing the voice for the lion, too. To the north we find Anne, and some of you may have already figured this out, but Anne is the Eld Witch. She recognizes the bracelet, but not Liddell. She says that not having this bracelet caused her to lose to Alice 1,000 years ago, and she fights us for it. We win, but Liddell isn't happy about it. Anne is able to remember Liddell, and can't believe that Liddell remembered her for all this time. Anne fades away, and Liddell cries again. Now we can go through the maze forest like we did before, but this time Alice's servants all comfort Liddell, explaining that death isn't permanent in Alice's world, and that she may be able to meet Anne again someday under better circumstances. We arrive at the Tea Party Garden, and this time all the princesses that we saved are here. They say that it's time for Liddell to go back to her own world, and Louis finally explains that Alice created this world that exists halfway between dreams and reality to contain the rune magic and the Eld Witch. All the princesses seem to be echoes of their real-life counterparts, and they all say that they want to meet Liddell in the real world too. Liddell returns the ancient tome to Louis, saying that she doesn't need these spells to become the greatest witch in the world, and Louis gives her a necklace to remember this adventure by. Before she wakes up, she gets to have one real conversation with Queen Alice. Liddell says that she finally realizes that she was never alone, and Alice tells her to awaken and return when she's all grown up. Liddell thanks her, and we get the good credits. Hansel and Gretel are reunited, Kaguya still tends to the gardens of Florin, Lyra is in charge of the fire djinn, Dorothy looks at the painting of her former friends, Aquelle tries on clothes from the surface, and Rapunzel rests in peace. Liddell wakes up in her school library, still wearing the necklace, though she can't remember her dream anymore. We pan out to Louis standing on the roof, no doubt watching over Liddell until she's ready to inherit Alice's throne properly. Aw man, that was a lot to get through, and it ended up barely making any sense. It seems like they tried to leave it open for a sequel, but we all know that's not happening, unfortunately. I don't recommend this game at all. Beating it one time was slow and repetitive enough. Having to do New Game Plus really doesn't add much to the experience besides a slightly less crappy ending. I really wanted this game to be something great, but unfortunately it's just okay. The art is good and the music is good, but the game part is the problem.
While A Witch's Tale can't be considered a good game, I also can't say that I regret playing it. It's a real shame that the devs just didn't get the time to polish it, and also that the story ended up being somewhat of a dream. And I don't think the identity of Liddell's mother ever gets resolved. Even though people on the internet say her mom is Alice, that doesn't make any sense because Alice was sealed away with the Elf Witch 1,000 years ago, and Liddell is nowhere near that old. But anyway, it was an interesting Halloween ride. I hope you've all been enjoying the spooky season. As always, let me know what you think of the video and what your thoughts on the game are. I hope to see you next time. Happy Halloween!